I've always been the girl who played by the rules, the one who made quiet sacrifices, showed up early, stayed late, and made herself small so others could shine. That's how I grew up. In a house where silence was currency and approval was always dangled, never given. My mother, Eleanor, used to say, Grace was born to be seen. You're smart. Stay useful. That was her way of saying I wasn't the daughter she bragged about. Grace was the golden one, literally. Blonde hair, green eyes, and the charm of a politician. She walked into a room and it tilted toward her. Even at school, teachers would light up when they saw her, then glance at me like I was her assistant. But I never hated her. Not really. I just accepted it. That I'd always be the supporting actress in the family's movie. Until I met Daniel. He was the first person who made me feel like the main character. We met at a product design summit in Austin. I was giving a talk on UX flow in health tech. Apps very unsexy, very me, and I saw him in the crowd, genuinely listening. Later that night, he found me by the bar. You talk like someone who's used the systems they're fixing, he said. And just like that, I melted. Someone saw me, not Grace. Not the polished surface I showed the world. Me. We talked for hours that night, and when I flew back home, he texted the same evening, You made product design sound like poetry. Dinner this weekend. That dinner turned into a relationship, then an engagement. And suddenly, after years of invisibility, my life was lit up. But so was my family's interest in me. Because Daniel came from money. Not the flashy kind. Quiet money. Old money. Private jet kind. I had no idea at first. He drove a used truck and wore sneakers with holes. I loved that about him. My mother loved something else entirely. You really think a man like that just chooses a girl like you? She'd said the first time she saw his watch. It wasn't even judgmental, more like disbelief. I wish I could say I walked away then. But I still wanted her approval, like a child waiting for a pat on the head. So I invited my family into our engagement process. Big mistake. From the first dress fitting to the catering menu, Mom criticized everything. Grace took over the bridal shower and turned it into her own photo shoot. My dad was quiet as usual, nodding, shrugging, disappearing behind his paper-thin newspaper walls, and every time I complained to Daniel, he smiled and said, Babe, we're gonna be married. After that, we built our own peace, but the storm was still brewing. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found out Grace had been texting Daniel. Harmless things, memes, funny wedding TikToks. Check out this photographer. But they weren't sent to the group chat. Just him. I asked him, gently. He looked me in the eye and said, She's your sister. She's being friendly. Maybe she was. Maybe I was paranoid. But deep down, my gut whispered something else, something I didn't want to hear. A week before the wedding, Grace vanished for 2 days. No texts. No calls. Mom acted like it was fine. She's probably de-stressing. You know how sensitive Grace is. Sensitive. Right. And then the wedding day came. I woke up early, looked out the window of the vineyard suite, and tried to steady my breath. I told myself I was ready. I loved him. We'd worked through everything. This was our day. The morning flew by in a haze of makeup artists, matching robes, clinking champagne glasses. Grace finally showed up glowing, unbothered, 2 hours late. She didn't even apologize. Mom just said, There she is. The day can finally begin. As if I hadn't been the bride waiting. I ignored it. I had to. I walked down the aisle like I was floating, white dress trailing behind me, heart pounding like a war drum. Daniel smiled when he saw me. That smile, at least, was real. And then, just as I reached the altar, my mother leaned in. She fixed my veil, tucked a curl behind my ear, and whispered, "You were never the first choice. Just a backup bride. Remember that." She smiled sweetly, like she'd just said, "You look lovely." The crowd clapped. I stood there, frozen. The words echoed like a scream behind my eyes. Backup bride. Not good enough. Never was, but I didn't break. Instead, I smiled, and the moment I did, I knew something had shifted inside me. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to ruin her. And she wouldn't even see it coming. As the officiant started speaking, I stood there, smiling. But inside, my brain was unraveling, knot by knot. My mother's words had punched a hole through my heart, and yet, all I could think was, she planned this. She waited until now to say it. Because she knew I couldn't walk away, she thought. She still had that power. She didn't. Daniel was holding my hand, gently rubbing his thumb across my palm, probably thinking I was just nervous. I looked at him. So steady, so sure. I glanced to my right. My mother and Grace sat in the front row, glowing like royalty. I had questions now. A lot of questions. What did she mean by backup bride? Why would a mother say that on her daughter's wedding day, unless there was something she was hiding? But I had a wedding to get through, and now a new mission. So I said the vows. I kissed Danielle. Everyone clapped. Champagne flowed. Cameras flashed. We smiled. But I was already planning. After the ceremony, I slipped into the dressing suite to freshen up. Really, I needed space to breathe. I locked the door, ripped off my veil, and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked like a bride in a magazine. Airbrushed, delicate, elegant, but under all that lace and gloss, I felt like fire. My phone buzzed. A text from my cousin Liv. "Did your mom actually say what I think she did at the altar? I was in the second row and saw your face change. I swallowed hard. Oh, I wasn't imagining it. People had heard." I texted her back. She said I was a backup bride. I'm going to figure out what she meant. But don't say anything yet. Liv replied instantly. Say the word. I'm with you. I smiled. Liv had always been the quiet rebel of the family. My mom hated her tattoos, her career in event planning, and the fact that she once called Grace a knockoff Kate Middleton. But she was loyal and sharp. I grabbed my bouquet and stepped back into the chaos. The reception was held under a canopy of light strung between oak trees. White roses, gold-rimmed glassware, fairy lights wrapped around pillars. My Pinterest board come to life. But it felt like a lie. I sat at the head table with Danielle and watched as my family paraded themselves around like royalty. Grace was laughing with groomsmen. Mom was flirting with Daniel's uncle. Dad was sipping quietly, already a few glasses in, and I was listening, quietly collecting pieces. First stop, my Aunt Margaret, Mom's older sister. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" she asked. "You looked a little pale during the ceremony." I gave her a tight smile. Mom said something odd to me right before the vows. She leaned in, dropping her voice. "Let me guess. Something about Grace?" I blinked. "What?" She hesitated. "Chloe. Don't quote me. But Eleanor had this wild idea back when Grace was still dating that rich lawyer, Nathan, that if you didn't hurry up and get a ring, she'd find a way to get Grace to step in." She used those words. Step in. My stomach turned. Step in, like a backup dancer. A substitute. I thanked Aunt Margaret and excused myself. The picture was forming fast. Too fast. I pulled Daniel aside behind the tent. He looked concerned. Hey, what's going on? You've barely touched your plate. I didn't want to ruin his night. Not yet, but I needed to know one thing. Daniel, did Grace ever hit on you? He blinked. What? I stared into his eyes. She texted you a lot. She was always around. Just tell me the truth. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. She tried. Twice. Before we got engaged. I shut her down. I felt like the floor had dropped from under me. She said things like, if Chloe ever messes up, call me instead. It was disgusting. I didn't want to upset you, so I never brought it up. But I should've. My hands clenched as though it was true. I was the backup bride in my mother's dream wedding, the one where Grace got the rich husband, the photo ops, the applause. They tried to replace me, but it didn't work. Daniel had chosen me, and now I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what my family was capable of. Back inside, I spotted Liv near the dance floor. I gave her a nod. She followed me out. I need your help, I said. Say less, she grinned. I want to leak everything. The texts, the manipulation, the story behind Grace and my MOM. But I want to do it the right way. Strategic, public, devastating. Liv's eyes lit up. You're talking controlled destruction. Exactly. She thought for a moment. Okay. First, we gather proof. I can comb Grace's Instagram for shady posts. You dig through your messages. Any recordings of MOM? I smirked. I recorded our dress-fitting day. She said some vile things about me being lucky to land a man with standards. It's on my phone. Perfect. And you know what? Liv added, pulling out her phone. Grace cheated on her last fiancé, Nathan. He might be willing to help us. My eyebrow shot up. You know him. We hooked up once, she said, completely unbothered. I laughed genuinely. It was the first time I felt light all day. Maybe this day wasn't the disaster they planned. Maybe it was the beginning of my rebellion and my revenge. The rest of the reception played out like a dream I was no longer part of. Grace twirled on the dance floor in her emerald satin gown, pretending the whole world revolved around her like always. My MOM mingled with Daniel's side, making strategic compliments and fishing for praise. My dad swayed gently in the corner with a whiskey in one hand and a glazed look in his eyes. I stayed close to Daniel, but my mind was elsewhere. While I posed for photos and accepted compliments on the decor, my heart beat to one drum. Expose them. Later that night, as guests filtered out and the music softened, I found a quiet moment with Liv in the bridal suite. She was already opening her laptop, fingers flying. Okay. Operation Expose the Royal Family is underway, she said with a grin. I've pulled 5 Insta stories where Grace made passive-aggressive jabs at you, like calling herself the real bride while trying on dresses. Who posts that while helping their sister plan a wedding? I scrolled through the screenshots and my blood simmered. There it was. Grace, pouting in front of a mirror in white satin, captioned, "Not the bride, but I could be if someone made the right choice." Just seeing that had been posted a month before the wedding. It had hundreds of likes. And I hadn't even seen it. How many people thought it was just a joke? How many believed it? I'm calling Nathan tomorrow, Liv said suddenly. If he agrees to talk, we'll get everything on record. Grace cheated, and your MOM helped cover it up. If he confirms that, we've got motive, we've got history, and we've got the shock factor. I nodded. And I'll go through Mo's voice memos. She talks a lot when she's not being watched. There might be something good from the planning meetings. Liv leaned back and smiled. We're gonna make this thing viral. That night, Daniel and I drove back to our suite at the vineyard. He pulled into the driveway and parked the car, but neither of us got out. I stared at the glowing dashboard. Do you regret it? I asked softly. He turned to me. Regret what? Marrying into my family. His brow furrowed. Chloe, I didn't marry your family. I married you. I bit my lip. I just keep thinking, what if they had gotten to you first? What if Grace had stopped? He said, his voice steady. There was never a question. Not for a second. Grace is noise. You're the music. I blinked back tears. The crawl whisper from MOM was still lodged in my chest like glass, but his words dulled it just a little. I reached across the console and held his hand. I need to do this, I whispered. Not just for me. For every time they made me feel like a mistake. He squeezed my fingers. Then we do it together. The next day, I put on leggings and a hoodie and drove to my parents' house. I told them I was picking up leftover decorations and some personal items. MOM was hungover from the post-wedding brunch. Grace was lounging in the kitchen with a green juice, scrolling her phone. Congrats again, back up bride, she smirked. I froze in the doorway. What did you just say? She looked up, smug. Oh, lighten up. MOM told me what she said. It was a joke. I stared at her for a long moment. She didn't flinch. She wasn't joking. I picked up the box of decorations on the table. Inside, tucked between candlesticks and unused napkins, was my old bridal planner, the one I'd given to MOM months ago. I opened it. Inside were pages of sketches. In Grace's handwriting, dress options, seating changes, venue notes, all dated months before Danielle and I got engaged. I felt the air thicken around me. She'd been planning to marry Daniel before I even knew he existed. Or had MOM expected to swap us at some point? I closed the book, held it to my chest, and looked at them both. You know, I used to think I was the invisible one, I said quietly. But maybe I was the only one you feared. MOM raised a brow. What's that supposed to mean? I smiled gently. It means I'm done hiding, and I left. That night, Liv called. Her voice crackled with excitement. He's in. Nathan, yup. He said Grace cheated with a coworker twice and your MOM begged him to stay quiet, because it would ruin her chances. He even kept the texts and voicemails. Holy, I sat upright. He kept them? All of it. He said it's his insurance in case she ever tried to slander him. He's willing to go public. I grinned. This was gold. We'll leak it anonymously first, Liv said. But I've got a better idea. What, you know your wedding speech? I hesitated. Yeah, you're going to rewrite it. She paused for effect. And this time, you're not thanking them. I sat at my kitchen table the next morning, staring at my half-written wedding speech, the one I never gave, the one I was supposed to deliver during the reception, before the first dance. I'd planned to thank my parents for raising me, thank Grace for always being there, and thank my new in-laws for welcoming me into the family. But the words felt like a lie now. I deleted the whole thing. Then I opened a new document. This one would be honest, not vengeful, not dramatic, just truthful, because the truth when spoken clearly, publicly, and with receipts is far more devastating than any scream. I titled it, For the Ones Who Tried to Replace Me. and I began to write. When I walked down the aisle yesterday, I felt something I never expected, not nerves, not fear, but clarity. You see, for years, I believed love was something you had to earn through silence, through obedience, through making yourself smaller so others could shine. I learned that in my family. I paused. My hands trembled slightly. Then I kept going. I was never the golden child. I was the placeholder, the stand-in, the safe bet. I didn't realize until this week that my own mother and sister considered me Plan BN. But I'm not mad, because Plan B just outsmarted everyone. I attached screenshots. Grace's Instagram post about being the real bride. The dress notes in her handwriting. Text from Nathan confirming the affair. A voice memo of MOM saying, "It's lucky Chloe was first, but Grace always fits better in the spotlight." It was more than enough. LIB helped me format everything into a clean, cinematic video voiceover style. She'd done this for influencers and brands. This was easy for her. We scheduled the upload for Saturday at noon. We posted it on an anonymous account, with no tags or credits, and sent it to 3 viral wedding drama pages. By Monday, the whole internet would be talking, but that wasn't the only plan in motion. I still had a reception to finish. Danielle and I had postponed our honeymoon for work obligations, so our families had offered to host a casual follow-up brunch at a garden hotel downtown. One final gathering to say goodbye before real life resumed. I showed up in a simple white sundress, no makeup, hair in a bun, and I brought copies. I printed the speech, left them at each place setting, tucked into the cloth napkins. People thought it was a thank you letter. They opened it. Silence fell. I stood by the door, watching faces change from cheerful to confused to horrified. MOM picked hers up, unfolded it, and froze midway through the first paragraph. Grace's chair screeched across the tile floor. "This is some kind of joke, right?" she barked, looking around. I stepped forward. "It's not a joke. It's my truth. Just like your Instagram wasn't a joke, or Nathan's texts, or Mom's voice memos." "You vindictive little no," I interrupted. "You don't get to talk anymore." My voice was calm, steady. The room was dead quiet. Daniel stood beside me, his expression unreadable, but his hand was resting on the small of my back, grounding me. Grace turned to him. "You knew?" He looked at her like she was a stranger. "I knew. I chose Chloe anyway." MOM stood next. "Chloe, this is not the place, no?" "MOM," I said, "this is exactly the place. You made the wedding public. You made me public. So now, you get the public version of me." Her face turned white. My Aunt Margaret nodded slowly, eyes wide in approval. My dad looked down at his plate, as usual. Then someone clapped. LIV. Then Daniel. Then others. Not everyone, but enough. Grace stormed out. MOM followed her, but not before whispering, "You've ruined everything." I smiled. "No, you did that. I just turned the lights on." By Sunday night, the video had 2.3 million views. By Tuesday, wedding bloggers were dissecting it. People debated whether it was real, but the screenshots were too specific, the voice memos too genuine, the handwriting matches too perfect. Someone even found Grace's original Instagram story and matched the dress to a designer she'd tagged. Internet detectives confirmed it. The phrase "backup bride" started trending. I didn't respond to any comments. I didn't need to. I'd said what I needed to say, and now I was free. I thought posting the video would be the end of it. That once I told the truth and left my family's fake perfection crumbling behind me, I could walk away clean. But I was wrong. You don't escape a legacy like mine without one final backlash. It came swiftly and messily. The Monday after the video went viral, I got a call from Grace's boss. I didn't pick up, but the voicemail was brief. "Hi, this is Karen Timmons, managing editor at Crescent Weekly. Just a heads up that Grace has taken a leave of absence while we investigate some public attention. I assume you're aware." Then she hung up. Grace had always loved working in lifestyle media. It was her dream job: beauty columns, fashion shoots, monthly influencer brunches. She was constantly name-dropping in group chats, posting behind-the-scenes clips like she was living in a Netflix show, and now she was trending on TikTok for all the wrong reasons. Clips of her smirking at the wedding, screenshots of her mocking me online, a supercut of her calling herself the prettier sister in multiple videos. The internet was eating it up. That evening, I got a different kind of call from my father, a number I hadn't saved in years. I debated answering. Let it go to voicemail. But curiosity won. "Hello," he hesitated. "It's your dad." I didn't say anything. I saw the video. What you posted. And I read the speech. "Your mom's been going crazy." Grace locked herself in her apartment. And honestly, he cleared his throat. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't say something sooner. I waited." "Okay," I said. "That's it." He asked, "What did you expect? A fight? A scream? Something?" "I ran out of screams 10 years ago," I said. "Silence is what you're used to, right? So here it is. Silence. Goodbye." And I hung up. It felt final, but freeing. He may have been passive all my life, but I was done holding space for men who looked away while women broke each other. 2 days later, LIV, and I met Nathan at a quiet CAF across town. He was even more charming than I remembered from Grace's engagement photos, tall, well-spoken, and calm in a way that felt earned. He slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything's here. The texts, voicemails, emails." "Thank you," I said. "I should've gone public years ago," he replied. "But Grace's MOM promised to destroy me. Said she'd make it hard to get hired anywhere. So I stayed quiet." I looked him dead in the eye. "That ends now," he smiled. "I hope you burn them down and then rebuild something better." And rebuild I did. Not just my reputation, but my whole life. Daniel and I skipped the fancy honeymoon. Instead, we drove down the coast in his beat-up truck, stopped at roadside diners, and stayed in cabins with no WI-FI. It was the first time I truly breathed in weeks. We talked about everything. Our childhoods, our dreams, what kind of family we'd be someday. Not perfect, not performative, just real. When we returned home, I made one last move. I changed my name legally. I dropped my family surname. It was small, symbolic, and the most powerful decision I'd ever made, because I wasn't the backup bride. I wasn't the filler daughter. I was Chloe. Just Chloe. And finally, that was enough. Some people think that when you expose a toxic family, you get peace. But that's not quite true. What you get is space, silence. And in that silence, you finally hear your own voice, maybe for the first time in your life. That's what happened to me. In the weeks following the viral video and the reception fallout, my phone rang constantly. Reporters, influencers, old classmates suddenly checking in. Even a documentary producer who wanted to do a series on wedding sabotage and generational dysfunction. I declined them all. Fame was never my goal. Freedom was. But my mother didn't disappear quietly. 2 weeks after the brunch fallout, she sent me an email. The subject line: "You've embarrassed us all, not are you okay? Not I'm sorry, not I didn't mean it, just that I opened it once. Read it." Then archived it without responding. But one line stayed with me: "You may have won the internet, but you lost your family." She was wrong. I hadn't lost my family. I had finally seen them clearly and chosen myself. There's a difference. One evening, Daniel came home to find me sitting on the floor of our living room, surrounded by childhood photo albums and boxes of old things I'd taken from my parents' attic. "Memory lane?" he asked, setting down his keys. "Sort of," I said, holding up a picture. "Look at this." It was a photo of Grace and me at a birthday party. She was blowing out the candles. I was off to the side, holding the lighter, still in my party dress, not even in the frame properly. "She got the wish," I said. "I got the responsibility." Daniel sat beside me. "You always carried the weight." "Because I thought that was love," I whispered. "Doing the work. Being quiet. Fixing things. Accepting crumbs." He reached for my hand. "And now, I want the whole damn cake." We both laughed. But it was more than a joke. It was a promise to myself. With the wedding scandal behind me, I poured myself into something new. My tech startup. Ironically, it was Grace's mess that gave me the push. I started a digital platform for women leaving toxic families or relationships, a combination of emotional support, legal tools, financial literacy, and community forums. We called it Rewritten. Tagline: "Not every story needs to end the way it started." LIV joined as creative director. Nathan invested. And within 6 months, we had partnerships with 2 nonprofit organizations and a grant from a mental health foundation. It was the first time I built something that was mine, not borrowed, not overshadowed, not surviving. Something that mattered. And I didn't care if my MOM saw it, because the applause I needed, it was already inside me. Then one night, I got a letter. A real letter. Handwritten. From Grace. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. No glitter. No lipstick kiss. Just plain white stationery. Her handwriting was still perfect. The message: "Less so. Chloe, I don't expect you to forgive me. I wouldn't either. I don't even know if I'm sorry for everything, but I'm sorry I hurt you. I was selfish. I let MOM pit us against each other. I was scared that if I didn't shine, I'd disappear. And I guess I made sure you disappeared instead. Grace." No excuses. No requests. Just recognition. That mattered more than she knew. I didn't write back. Some letters don't need replies. Some chapters just need closure. A month later, I found myself at a quiet beach with Daniel. The sun was setting. My toes were buried in the sand. He turned to me suddenly and pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. "Wait," I said, laughing. "You already married me." "I know," he grinned. "But that wedding wasn't really ours. That was theirs. This is for us." He opened the box. A simple gold band, engraved inside. "Plan C. Always." I cried. This time, not because of pain, but because someone had finally chosen me, without conditions, and I finally chose myself too. Healing doesn't come in a straight line. It comes in circles, like waves lapping at the shore. Some days, I felt calm, whole, grateful. Other days, a smell, a song, or a comment online would reopen the ache in my chest. But over time, the ache stopped bleeding. It became instruction. Every scar on my heart taught me how not to love people. Every disappointment from my family taught me what real family is: not the ones who share your DNA, but the ones who show up. Rewritten grew fast. Faster than we'd planned. We held webinars, created courses, hosted anonymous survivor spaces. Thousands of women from around the world joined, many who'd grown up in homes just like mine, homes that looked picture perfect on the outside but were rotting with manipulation inside. One day, I got a message from a woman in Wisconsin. She said, "Thank you. I finally walked away from my mother after she tried to put me in debt for my sister's wedding. I thought I was crazy. You helped me realize I wasn't." I cried reading that, because I had thought I was crazy too. That's what narcissistic families do best: gaslight you into thinking your pain is exaggerated. But it's not. It's valid. It's real. And it's not weakness to walk away. It's survival. Danielle and I were stronger than ever. We traveled. We cooked new meals together. We adopted a dog and named her Clover, a small rescue mutt who didn't trust humans at first. She reminded me of myself, honestly. But over time, she curled up on our bed, wagged her tail at the door, and barked like a lunatic anytime someone tried to approach me. She was my emotional support beast in fur. Then I got an invitation, hand-delivered, embossed, from mom.it. Was for a reconciliation brunch. Location: the country club. Theme: faith, family, and fresh starts. No, I'm not joking. I read the whole thing twice and then laughed. Daniel said, "You're not actually considering going, right?" "No," I said slowly. "But I am considering." Responding. Not with silence, with strategy. Because I had something they didn't expect: power. The kind that didn't come from pleasing people, but from walking away from them and building something better. So I did RSVP, just not in the way they hoped. On the day of the brunch, instead of showing up, I scheduled a nationwide live stream on the Rewritten platform. Topic: how to set boundaries with toxic parents even when they try to buy you back. Over 20,000 people tuned in. I told my story fully. Not just the wedding version, but the whole journey. From childhood to scapegoat to woman reclaiming her worth. We had therapists weigh in. Lawyers explain inheritance laws. Women share their own betrayal stories. And at the end, I looked straight into the camera and said, "To anyone who ever called you ungrateful for saying no to emotional abuse, this is your reminder. Love without respect is just control wearing perfume. You are allowed to say enough. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to live free." It was the most liberating thing I'd ever done. 2 hours after the live stream ended, I got a furious voicemail from my mother. "You've destroyed this family. Do you feel powerful now? You're dead to us." I listened once, smiled, then deleted it, and then I blocked her number. For good, not because I was angry, but because I was done. 2 months later, I got another letter from Grace. Again, but this one was different. She said she was in therapy, that she'd been diagnosed with something trauma-related personality patterns, and that she was trying to unlearn what MOM taught her. She didn't ask for anything. She just said, "If you ever want to meet again, not as sisters by blood, but as women healing from the same wound, I'm open." That's the thing about healing. Sometimes you walk away, but sometimes, if you're lucky, someone meets you on the other side, and maybe you begin again, on your terms. When Grace asked to meet, I didn't answer right away. Not out of spite, not out of fear, but because I needed time to listen to myself, not the old conditioned version that jumped to fix things, but the new version that honored her own peace. 3 weeks passed before I wrote back. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I said, I'm open to a slow rebuild if your actions match your words. One step at a time. No rush, no pressure, no pretending. She responded with grace, ironically, finally living up to her name. We met at a small indie CAF in a part of town no one from our family ever went to. Neutral ground. I arrived early, half wondering if I was about to walk into another setup. But when Grace entered, she didn't look smug or superior or armed with mother script. She looked tired, not in a poor me kind of way, but like someone carrying the weight of decades. She hugged herself before she hugged me, like she was bracing for rejection. Hi, she said softly. Hi. We sat, and we talked. For the first time really talked. Not about whose dress was prettier or who got what from Dad's trust, but about how we both were used as pawns in Mom's unspoken war. How she was praised for being perfect and punished the second she stepped out of line. How I was scapegoated from the beginning, so she'd always look golden in comparison. How did we not see it? She whispered. I looked down. Because we were kids. We weren't supposed to have to see it. She was supposed to love us. Tesfell.no drama. No theatrics. Just two sisters sitting in the quiet. We started meeting monthly. No big leaps. Just gentle check-ins. She told me about her therapy. How hard it was to stop hearing Mom's voice in her own head. I nodded. I still hear it too. Sometimes I don't even realize it's her until I feel like shrinking. Exactly, she said. It's like a ghost. One that shames you for breathing. We laughed. It felt good. It felt like something was slowly being untangled. Carefully. Together. One day, Grace asked, do you think we could visit Dad's grave? That was a trigger I hadn't touched in years, but I said yes, because I was ready. We went together. No flowers. No pretense. Just us. I stood in front of his stone and whispered the truth I'd never said aloud. You could stopped it. You saw her break me over and over, and you chose silence. That silence made her stronger. But not anymore. Grace held my hand, shaking. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm sorry I ever thought it was my fault. We stood in that stillness for a long time. Not for him, but for us. A year passed. Grace became one of the moderators for Rewritten. She shared her journey, her relapses, her realizations. Women thanked her, said her words helped them forgive themselves, not their abusers, but the part of themselves that believed they deserved it. We started CO hosting events, started writing a book together, title, Sisterhood, The Scars That Made Us Whole. It wasn't just about blood. It was about becoming the family we never had for ourselves and for others. Then one day, we got a letter from mom. It wasn't handwritten. It was typed. Cold, precise. She threatened to sue us for defamation. Said our organization was an embarrassment to the family legacy, that we twisted the truth to paint her as a villain. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, a clean, full laugh, because her power was gone. Her letters didn't burn. They bounced off. Grace smirked. Do we reply? Nope, I said. We let our peace be louder than her threats. We framed the letter, hung it in our office. Above it, we wrote, proof you're doing the right thing. When the people who once controlled you start losing sleep over your freedom. And then came the invitation. Another one. This time, from a woman I didn't recognize. Her name was Lydia James. It said, "I've been following your journey through Rewritten. My daughter is one of your readers. I run a mentorship initiative for teen girls aging out of the foster system. We'd love to bring you in to speak, not as a victim, but as someone who reclaimed her voice." I read it twice, and then I cried, because that's the real ending, isn't it? Not revenge, not exposure, but becoming someone you once needed when you were still breaking. The summer was suffocating, not just because of the heat, but because of the tension that gripped my heart every time I stepped into a room where either of my parents were. I had gotten used to speaking less and listening more, recording everything. I was no longer their daughter in their eyes. I was a threat, an obstacle, and apparently that made me dangerous. One afternoon, I got a call from an old friend of Mom's. Her name was Roseanne, a woman I barely remembered from my childhood. She ran an assisted living business out in Minnesota. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Sweetheart," she said in a gravelly tone, "your parents have asked me to take you in temporarily. They're telling people you've had a nervous breakdown." I was stunned. "They're trying to commit me?" I asked, mouth dry. "Legally, they're trying to push for a conservatorship." Filed something quietly with the family court here. "They think I'd be easy to convince to play along." "Will you?" "Honey," she said, "I've known your mom since we were in high school. She was always dangerous when she felt her image was being threatened. But I don't play like that." We talked for a long time. Roseanne explained that she saw how twisted this had gotten, and while she wouldn't get involved in court, she would send me the court filing. When I read it, my hands shook. They were painting me as unwell, as hysterical, saying I'd been irrational since Nana's death, that I was making up delusions about property, and worst of all, they used parts of my therapy records, things I had once shared in confidence. I felt violated, but not broken. That night, I sat in the dark with my laptop and a thumb drive that held every bit of proof I'd compiled. Audio recordings of my parents admitting to forging Nana's signature, texts between my uncle and dad about hiding money in shell accounts, and even a video of my mom laughing while talking about how easy it is to bend people's pity when they see a crying daughter. I created multiple backups, sent a copy to a journalist who covered elder abuse cases, and another to a lawyer who specialized in contested wills and conservatorship fraud. I sent one last copy to the state attorney. Dad had once used an anonymous tip from a concerned citizen. Then I vanished. I moved out quietly in the middle of the night, using a storage locker I had prepaid for. I didn't tell anyone. I left no social trace, and I used a new number to communicate only with people I trusted. Even Ellie didn't know where I was. Not fully, because I wasn't just running anymore. I was baiting them. Sure enough, within 48 hours, my parents filed a missing persons report. On Facebook, they posted about my fragile state. They even held a candlelight vigil at the church. The town cried for them, sympathized, sent flowers, but while they were busy pretending to be victims, I filed my lawsuit: forgery, financial abuse, attempted fraudulent conservatorship, defamation, and petitioned for criminal charges on elder financial exploitation. And then, using the voice recordings, I exposed them in the media. The journalist I had contacted published the full expose, calling it "Grieving Granddaughter" or "Greedy Parents," a family silent war over a $3 million legacy. It exploded online. Suddenly, I wasn't the girl who went crazy. I was a whistleblower. Suddenly, my parents weren't the grieving victims. They were national headlines, and then came the knock on their door. Police, investigators, lawyers, but I didn't show up just yet. No, I was saving my return for court because they had made one mistake too many. They underestimated how much power a quiet girl really had. And I wasn't done yet. The courtroom smelled like stale coffee and broken promises. It was the kind of place where truths are weighed and lies get tangled in a web of legalese. But this time, the scales felt like they might finally tip in my favor. I walked in with my lawyer, head held high. My evidence, the recordings, the texts, the documents were all laid out on the table. The judge's eyes flicked between the papers and me, searching for the truth beneath the chaos. MOM and Dad sat stiffly on the other side, flanked by their lawyers. Their faces were pale shock mixed with fury, as if they were realizing that control was slipping through their fingers. The trial was long, painful, exhausting, but every lie they told was met with a recording. Every accusation met with a time-stamped message. And when my lawyer read the part about the forged signature on Nana's will, Mom's composure cracked for the first time. When the verdict came, the courtroom held its breath. The judge ruled in my favor. The conservatorship petition was dismissed, the forged documents were voided, and an investigation into elder financial abuse was launched. My parents were ordered to repay the misappropriated funds with interest. But more than that, they were ordered to attend counseling and restitution programs. As I walked out of the courthouse, sunlight warming my face, I felt something I hadn't in years: relief, but also pride, not just for winning, but for standing up, for reclaiming my story, for proving that even when your own blood tries to break you, you can rise. Later, Daniel wrapped his arms around me. "You did it," he whispered. "No," I said softly. "We did it." Because behind every victory was a team: my friends, my lawyer Liv, Nathan, the women of Rewritten, and Daniel. Together, we rebuilt what was broken. Together, we wrote a new ending. And sometimes, late at night, I think about the little girl who once believed she was invisible, the one who got called a backup bride and a disappointment. And I smile, because that little girl, she wasn't invisible. She was just getting ready to become unstoppable. Thanks for watching. If you watched till the end, please comment revenge so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as please let us know, where are you watching from? What do you want to hear from us in next video? If you have any incident in your life, please let us know. We would love to share your story.